Yabba dabba doo, it's time for my monthly comics review. Now, I apologize for any background noise. It seems like the neighbors have their yard service in today and there's all sorts of machines going whir and ring and bada bing. So it is what it is. We'll just power through it. Now, first up, we got some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, regular issues number 126 and 127 of the ongoing series. I don't have 125. That's why I've kind of been putting off doing these ones. I've had them for a little while. They forgot to put it in my box the one day, so I've asked them to order it for me, and it still hasn't shown up yet. So I thought I'd just go ahead with 126 and 127 and just before they all start building up, and I have a whole shitload of them to do. But anyways, in issue 125, which I don't have, we saw at the end of issue 124 that these mutant frogs were kind of scoping out the Turtles' operation. In issue 125, they must have attacked for some reason. They totally destroyed the Splinter Dojo and all that stuff. So they just laid this massive attack on the Turtles out of the blue that they weren't ready for, and have basically turned the Turtles' lives upside down. So in issues 126 and 127, we see the Turtles rally and attack the mutant frogs on their own turf. And the fight's kind of a stalemate. The Turtles eventually have to screw off into the sewers. And during the fight, one of the mutant frogs, the one that said the Turtles were bad guys, he said that because he thought they kidnapped one of their allies. And it was like, yeah, I think that was him. So they're not entirely sure the Turtles are actually at fault, but it doesn't really make any difference. So during the Turtles' flight, after this fight, Donatello stumbles upon this mutant doctor. He's a rat/human, kind of like Splinter, but not like Splinter. And he does he's a doctor and he does mutant restoration, let's say. And Donatello's really intrigued because he has problems with his shell. So moving into issue 127, and during all this time there's a lot of tension within the group, especially between Raph and Alapex, who are romantically linked. He's taken on the role of deputy of Mutant Town, and he's taken his position a little too literally sometimes, and she has issues with that, and it seems there's all this tension within the group. And in issue 127, the Turtles are looking like, what do we do? The dojo's ruined, so they end up taking all their allies and stuff to an old church that they used as a hideout before, and they settle in there while they regroup and decide what to do. In the meantime, Donnie tries to sneak out one night and go see that doctor because he's intrigued about maybe getting his shell fixed. Alapex sees him going, he's like, you're not going without me. Once they get there, Donnie goes talks to the doctor. Alapex splits off and starts snooping around a bit and stumbles upon some incriminating evidence because she doesn't trust this doctor guy, and she told Donnie that. And now she may just have the evidence she needs to convince Donnie of that if she survives the encounter. And that's kind of where everything leaves off at the end of those two issues. The other Turtle thing I got was issue 5 of the Last Ronin series, which I had totally forgotten about because it seems like it took them forever to issue this issue 5. And in it, Mikey is getting ready to make his final attack on Hiroto and end the last of the Shredder line. And he's kind of having these flashbacks of his 3 deceased brothers, and they're all giving him grief and whatever in his little fantasy sequences. But he eventually sets out to confront Hiroto and bring him down at his big tower building in the middle of the city. In the meantime, April and her daughter Casey are trying to evacuate people from the city because it's about to flood, and they're also trying to stop the flood from happening. So they've got a bunch of stuff going on the ground. Michelangelo, the Last Ronin, works his way through a bunch of Hiroto's defenses and finally confronts Hiroto, who has this almost like T-1000 liquid metal bodysuit sort of thing, this armor. So Mikey's like, oh shit. So he has to find a way to counteract this armor and find a chink in it, so to speak, and then expose it. In the end, it all comes down to a battle as they fight through the sewers and then into this mud pit once they exit the sewers, where both of them perish in the final combat. And Casey, April's daughter, is super upset to see her sensei Mikey die. And on his kind of deathbed, he says, I've given you Splinter's journal. Everything you need to know is in here. I've trained you all I can. Take this and roll with it. And then there's an epilogue at the end of the story where Casey is training, and she's like, oh, I better feed you guys. And then there's 4 little turtles in this little habitat she has. So I don't know if she's planning on turning them into mutants, or if she's just keeping 4 pet turtles to celebrate her fallen comrades. So we'll see. The guy at the comic store told me this series is still going after this issue. So it seemed like there was a pretty emphatic closure to this issue, and that was the end of the series, but maybe not. Next up, Transformers, issue 42 of the regular ongoing series. And in this one, Optimus Prime is leading as many Autobots as he can towards Darkmount to keep them safe. And the Lodestar, the Titan that fell from the sky, that is severely damaged but did help save the day earlier in the story, is so low on power, and he's trying to get Lodestar there too, so that everybody can be safe, everybody can get repaired, whatever. However, on the way there, they're ambushed by a bunch of Decepticons that don't take the truce with Prime, and it's kind of a trap because they have boxed them in on one side and sent the rustworms rushing at them from the other side. So they've tried to trap them in this little pincer movement or whatever, pincer movement, and destroy them that way. So Optimus Prime has this intermatrix kind of moment with this Transformer. I don't know what her name is. He tries to figure out what to do. In the meantime, on the other side of things, Wheeljack, Termagax, and Perceptor are coming up with a way to try and save the day. And it seems like they're going to have to resort to extreme measures, but we don't quite know what those measures are yet. And the other thing that's going on is that Smokescreen is leading a team of Autobots along with Hound to try and ferret out the Insecticons' base and to try and get a live sample of one of these Insecticons in their possession, which I think is all part of Wheeljack and Perceptor's plan and stuff. So they have some kind of plan there to help maybe turn the tide of this war, because they have the Decepticons on one side, they have Exertron on another side, and then they have the Insecticons on another side. So there's all these things they're up against all at one time, sort of thing. The other issue is episode 3 in the War's End sub-series right now, which all ties in with events at the same time as this regular series is going. And in this one, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And it continues on from last time. Deathsaurus, which has part of Exertron's spark or soul in him, whatever it is, are squaring off against a bunch of Autobots led by Pyra Magna, Jumpstream, Sunstreaker, as well as some Decepticons that are in on the fray. And these Decepticons kind of come to, or Autobots, kind of come to a temporary truce with Six-Shot and some of his Decepticon allies, because they all recognize the threat that Deathsaurus being inhabited by Exertron is, and so they work together to try and take him down, and then they can deal with their own hostilities against each other after the fact, right, sort of thing. So that's going on, and Onslaught's involved in the fight, Cyclonus is involved in the fight, so there's all these different factions that have these different kind of views on what's going on, working alongside each other and also against each other. And we see Devastator arrive on the scene. Remember, he arrived right at the end of the last issue. We see him show up, and in the meantime, Exertron, one of the other robots he's inhabiting, is talking to Shockwave, and he sees Sunstorm in captivity. He's like, "Ooh, I'd really like to take over this body. Release him, Shockwave." And Shockwave's like, "No, this guy's a menace to society. He's staying in there." And then Megatron shows up, and Exertron's like, "Oh, Megatron, blah blah blah." He makes fun of him and stuff like that, and Megatron's just like, "Pow! Okay, that guy's dead." So now Exertron only has one robot left that he's inhabiting, and it's Deathsaurus. So he kind of recognizes after he gets killed by Megatron, he's like, "Oh crap, I better be careful with Deathsaurus, because this is the only slab of me I have left," sort of thing, right? And as that happens, we see Deathsaurus kind of he comes at Devastator and says, "Let me show you a different kind of combining." So I don't know if Exertron is going to try to inhabit Devastator so that he can wreak ultimate havoc on stuff, or what's going to happen, but that's kind of how the issue closes off, and it will be really interesting to see exactly what ends up with that whole situation. Last up, G.I. Joe. Only one issue, and it is the regular ongoing series, issue 291. This issue takes place entirely on a train, the Transcarpathian Express, that is rolling down the tracks, and there are some terrorists that have raided the train and want something, or after something that's on it, and they've taken hostages, and it's not a good situation. So the G.I. Joe team is on site on the train, and they're working their way towards the front of the train to confront these terrorists, save the hostages, and save the day, basically. But the issue starts off with a flashback from, I think, Vietnam, maybe, where Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, before they became Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, they were still Tommy and Sean, or no, what's his name? I forget. But it begins with some flashbacks, and you're like, oh, why is this happening? And then all of a sudden, it pans to current times when they're on the train, and it's the G.I. Joe ninja named Dawn. I forget what her code name is. She's somehow got Snake Eyes' memories inside of her, and certain things cue her off, certain phrases or certain events that will make her think of a flashback from Snake Eyes' life. And that's what this sequence is with Tommy and or Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in Vietnam at the beginning. It's a flashback that's kind of happened upon her as the fighting is going on the train. And as the train situation is solved along the way, she goes through more flashbacks and sees Scarlet in them, and a bunch of other Joes. And in the end, after everything is the day is saved, the train is stopped, Dawn comes up to Scarlet and says, I can't take this anymore, this whole flashback thing with Snake Eyes things, it's driving me crazy. And that's where things close off.